If you've been wondering why you're not getting pregnant and maybe having a feeling that it's because of your thyroid, then I want you to listen up. This video is something you're going to want to check out. Today, I am here to unravel this crucial piece of the conception puzzle because it might be the missing link for many of you. And if you've been tirelessly trying to conceive without success, it's time to explore this topic that really often goes unnoticed and really plays a significant role in your fertility. And of course, that's what the video is about. It's your thyroid. If you're new here, welcome to Fertility TV. This is the place to be if you want to improve your fertility naturally. I've been helping couples get pregnant for 20 years, and in many, many cases, that's right, the thyroid and treating the thyroid has been the key to success in getting the pregnancy that we desire. But hey, before we dive into that, make sure that you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified when I put out a new video for all of you, because I'm about to share an eye-opening video and I want to make sure you get all my future videos as well. If you've been feeling a bit lost or wondering why the stork hasn't dropped by, trust me, you're not alone. Understanding how your thyroid plays a role in this could be the missing piece that you need and could be exactly what's going to open the door to your fertility and your pregnancy. So let's jump into that right now. So the thyroid. Yeah, it's a small gland right here, right there in your throat that plays such a big role in your overall health and obviously in your fertility as well. Often we are told, or you might be told, that your thyroid's just fine. There is no real important connection between your thyroid and your fertility. This is either a misunderstanding or someone who is ignoring the information in front of them. Your thyroid is not only important to get pregnant, it's also really important to stay pregnant and have a healthy pregnancy. So it has far-reaching impacts when it comes to fertility and pregnancy. And some really don't believe that your thyroid can impact your fertility. But I'm telling you, as a fertility expert and someone who's been working in this field for 20 years, it absolutely does. And when I impact that, when we improve that gland and your thyroid function, we often see some amazing things happen in overall health and fertility. And so I want the same thing for all of you, but I also acknowledge and understand that not only is your fertility struggle real, your struggle to get the proper testing, the proper understanding and knowledge, and the proper care is also real. And it's no more real than when we talk about thyroid issues, because there's so much misunderstanding and misconception, and there's such a big discrepancy on how that needs to be approached when you talk to, your general provider versus your OBGYN and your fertility doctor. So we need to unpack that today, but to start unpacking that, we need to understand how your thyroid works and what it does for your fertility. So as I mentioned earlier, your thyroid is a small gland right here in your throat. But all of those hormones don't live right here, and it's impacted by many other things. Specifically, your thyroid is impacted by your brain, actually specifically your pituitary, which is where your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone, is produced. This gland, the pituitary gland in your brain, and the TSH, the thyroid stimulating hormone that's produced there, is going to send a signal to your thyroid to produce its primary hormones, T3 and T4. Now, some of you might be saying, well, I've heard of TSH before, and this has been tested, but I've not heard of T3 or T4 before. And that's because your primary hormone is TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone. That is also the primary hormone that is checked because the main medications that your physicians have to improve, in this case, improving your fertility, or improving your thyroid, impacts TSH directly, which is why that is so often checked and primarily checked when we are looking at thyroid health. But it's not the only piece of the puzzle. And there's many other hormones as it relates to your thyroid that are often not checked, but they are also very, very important to regular overall thyroid health and reproductive health. So you might be saying, okay, so I understand there's your thyroid and there's some hormones associated with your thyroid, but how does this really impact your fertility, or how can it impact your fertility? Well, one of the main ways is that the production of TRH receptors, which stimulate your TSH, your thyroid stimulating hormone production, is impacted by estrogen, which is such an important hormone for fertility and just overall reproductive health, especially as women age. And so as your estrogen levels change over your lifetime, it will impact your thyroid gland and the production of TSH. And this is no more clearly seen than when you're pregnant, because your estrogen levels change, and as a result, your TSH is much more sensitive. And what we often see during that time is that your TSH goes up, which we don't really want. I'll explain why in just a moment as I cover kind of these other conditions associated with thyroid health. But as your TSH goes up, if it goes too high, that can impact the health of the pregnancy and the baby. This is also important for fertility so that you can have healthy fertility to get pregnant easily. And some of these other conditions that I'm going to discuss in a moment will also potentially impact your ability to hold a pregnancy. So there is a huge connection between thyroid health and reproductive health and your fertility, which is why I'm covering it today and why it's so important for all of you. So the two main conditions that we often see are what's called hypothyroidism or hyperthyroidism. Hypo means that it's sluggish, it's not functioning well enough in terms of production. Hyper means it's overproductive, right? There's too much thyroid hormone going on, and both of those have, profound impacts on your fertility. Hypothyroidism is much more common, and when someone says they have a thyroid issue, that's typically what they mean. Now, what I want to paint is a picture here of how it relates to your hormone. So we often check your main hormone, right? TSH, as I mentioned before, thyroid stimulating hormone. And when you have hypothyroidism, your TSH goes up, it goes high, and that is because your thyroid is sluggish, it's not producing enough of its hormone, and so it's sending a signal back to your brain to say, I need more. And so the hormone that does that is TSH, stimulating hormone, and so it goes higher to produce more T3 and T4. So as that goes high, if it keeps creeping higher, that becomes a problem. We don't really, for fertility purposes, really don't want to see it over 2.5. I'm a little bit flexible, but once it approaches 3 or above, I'm concerned about it. Your reference ranges that you're going to see on lab work are probably going to be closer to 4, 4.5. That's the high end, which is why some doctors don't want to do anything about it. But often when that goes too high for each one of us, and certainly we don't want to see it higher than that, then we start to express symptoms of hypothyroidism. Those symptoms are that you are cold, you are tired, fatigued, and sluggish. You might gain weight. The hair quality might change. These are all things that are impacted by hypothyroidism. An extension of hypothyroidism, which is also fairly common to see, I would say 50 to 60% of all women with hypothyroidism have what's called Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune condition. So not only do you have hypothyroidism, you also have an autoimmune thyroid in conjunction with that. Those have to be addressed somewhat individually. I mean, we can do it together, but most conventional medical models really address those separately. And if you have Hashimoto's disease, it's going to be harder to hold a pregnancy. So we need to make sure all of that is supported, which is also why it's so important to test all your hormones, including your thyroid antibodies, and not just your TSH. The other less common condition that we see is hyperthyroidism. So your T3 and T4 are overproductive. It sends a signal saying we need less, and so your TSH keeps going down and down and down and down. The autoimmune piece of that is what's called Graves' disease. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with either one of those because we don't really see it that often. I'm not saying it's not there, it is, but most cases are of what's called hypothyroidism. Now, these imbalances can directly impact your menstrual cycle and ovulation. So with hypothyroidism, you can actually see a woman have irregular menstrual cycles or irregular periods or miss periods altogether. That's not good for conception, right? So we need to make sure that from a hypothyroid perspective, that's functioning properly, that your thyroid is supported so that you can have regular healthy periods and ovulation so you can conceive. And we also need to make sure, if you have an autoimmune issue, that that's being managed so we can make sure that you hold a pregnancy and have a healthy pregnancy. Hashimoto's disease is really, really common. And so we want to make sure that we address all of that. But coming back to ovulation, obviously, if you're not ovulating properly or don't have a regular ovulation, you're going to have a hard time conceiving because you can't time intercourse properly, and we're going to have a hard time getting the sperm and egg to meet, which is why making sure that you have such a healthy ovulation is so important. And that's why having healthy, good functioning thyroid is essential to your fertility and a pregnancy. One of the hardest things that I hear from all couples, they often complain that it's very difficult to get proper thyroid testing, let alone proper thyroid support. But let's start with the testing, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we need much more than just TSH. We need to make sure that your T3 and T4 are both tested, that your antibodies are tested. And I often go beyond that because there's so many other things that impact your thyroid health, like stress, that we need to understand and have comprehensive labs done so that we know what's going on. And this can be challenging. This is why you need proper thyroid functional tests, and why you need to get somebody, you need to have a provider who's there to support you properly, who could do the proper evaluations. These are things that I encourage everyone to do. You can start doing them now. But if you are a member in my Hope Coaching Program, this is something we dive deep into because it plays such a big role. So we support you in the program to make sure you get the proper testing so we can make sure that you also get the proper support. Now, I just mentioned other things impact your thyroid health, right? It's not just all about your thyroid. Well, I mentioned stress. Stress is a huge one because your stress is managed, or your stress response, I should say, is managed by your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands communicate with your hypothalamus and your pituitary. So I just spoke about how important those two glands are to your thyroid because they communicate with your thyroid. So we need to make sure that from a lifestyle perspective that we're managing your stress and you have proper tools to manage your stress, because you're never going to eliminate it. Stress is always there. We have to address it. But also that you're also getting proper nutrition for your fertility and for your thyroid, because nutrition is so important. Actually, one of the key nutrients for proper healthy thyroid function is iodine. So if we are not getting enough proper healthy iodine, or we don't have good iodine levels, we could see that impact our thyroid as well. Now, not all of us should be taking iodine, so it does depend on our personal individual circumstances, but I do want to encourage proper good nutrition. And all of these lifestyle choices, getting proper healthy sleep and exercise, will absolutely impact your thyroid health as well. So we want to make sure that we're addressing all of those things so we can have good, healthy reproductive function and thyroid function. So I know some of you out there might be saying, well, yeah, but I've got my doctor, my OBGYN or my primary physician is going to take good care of me. They always look at my thyroid. I want you all to look at your lab tests that you've had done over the last year. How many of you actually had all the things I just mentioned looked at? I would speculate not many. And that's because conventional medicine treats thyroid disorders conventionally, right? If you're not outside of those normal ranges, even if you have a lot of thyroid symptoms, they're going to say you're healthy, you're fine, and you're not going to get the proper support that you need. So I want to encourage you to be proactive. One of the ways that you can be proactive is to get a coach, a health coach or a fertility coach, so that you can get the proper evaluations and, more importantly, get a personalized plan for your specific needs, that you're not going to be supported or treated like everybody else in the world, because you are unique and you are an individual. If you are serious about getting pregnant and would like to have me as your fertility coach to look at your thyroid health, your adrenal health, and everything else, then head on over to marksklar.com/discovery call. I'm going to drop that link in the description below to set up a time to speak to a real person on my team so we can find out if having me as your fertility coach is the right next step for you. If you want to do that, again, use the link in the description below. And what I'm going to do now is also leave some links here for some success stories, what I call stories of hope, so that you can see and hear from real members of my coaching program to see what they've been through and the successes that they've had. Until the next video, stay fertile.